The hour of 7 o'clock having arrived, I'll call the council to order. Let the roll reflect that all council members are in attendance and a quorum has been established. Tonight, we're going to begin our council meeting with the introduction of a new employee. And Melanie, I'll turn that over to you, or I'll turn it over to Julie.
Thank you.
Julie?
Mayor and council, I'm very privileged and excited to introduce Melanie Lammers as our newest finance manager. Melanie began with us on April 10th. She graduated from Bellevue University in Nebraska and is currently working towards her master's degree at St. Mary's. Most recently, she held the position of finance director for the city of Northfield. She brings a wealth of knowledge and experience. She also has previous public and private sector auditing experience. So we're very confident she will keep us in line and keep us moving forward. We're very excited to have her.
Thank you.
Melanie, you have a few words? Please.
I just wanted to say thank you for hiring me. I'm very excited to be here, and I'm very excited to get to know and work with all of you.
Welcome aboard. We're glad to have you on board.
Thank you.
Next, we have a proclamation that we're going to read as a council, and I'll ask, is Pete here? Bullock here? You want to meet me at the dais? We have a very important event coming up on Saturday. It's the 150th anniversary, or what some may say the sesquicentennial. Okay, and that's coming up in celebration of Lakeside Cemetery, and in recognition of that event and of the importance of that sacred ground there to the community. We have a proclamation that we're going to read tonight, and then I'm going to turn it over to Pete. Does that sound good? And Councilmember Vaughn, I'll have you start.
Whereas on May 6, 1867, 10 years after the incorporation of the city of Hastings, 9 resourceful women registered the Lakeside Cemetery Association at the Dakota County Courthouse, purchased the property, and elected Samantha Sprague Lewis, Maria Van Haschen, Julia M. Allen, and Emma R. Leduc officers, and
whereas Lakeside Cemetery has grown from 13 to 34 acres and serves as the final resting place to over 5,500 citizens, including more than 500 war veterans, and
whereas Lakeside Cemetery is a self-sustaining, non-sectarian, nonprofit association dedicated to serving the Hastings community, and
whereas over the decades, the Board of Trustees has consistently articulated their desire that Lakeside Cemetery be a place that honors the dead and is a credit to the living, and
whereas Lakeside Cemetery has for generations flourished with the leadership and labors of dedicated leaders and volunteers, while Lakeside Cemetery continues to respond to changing burial trends and budgetary concerns of families, and
whereas the histories and futures of Lakeside Cemetery and Hastings have always been and will forever be intertwined, and that Lakeside Cemetery will host a sesquicentennial celebration of history and community for the city of Hastings from 1 o'clock to 3:30 on Saturday, May 6, 2017, and
Now therefore be it resolved. I, Paul Hicks, Mayor of the City of Hastings, do hereby declare Saturday, May 6, 2017, as Lakeside Cemetery Association Founders Day in Hastings, Minnesota, in celebration of its sesquicentennial anniversary. Congratulations, Pete. Maybe you could talk a little bit about the event coming up on Saturday.
Sure, thank you. Thank you, Mayor Hicks, members of the City Council, for this acknowledgement. Like it states in the proclamation, Saturday, May 6th, starting at 1 o'clock, we're going to have a gathering at the cemetery celebrating the 150th. And we would like all listeners and members of Hastings to come. We will be kicking things off at 1 o'clock. At 1:15, we will have a remembrance and a dedication with you involved, and Gordon Gathright and the VFW honor card. We will also have carriage rides, cake and ice cream. We'll have seek and find for the children. One of the big things that we're looking forward to is we have guided tours of past historical figures from Hastings, and also a personal walking tour of other members from Hastings. our office will be open. You'll be able to go in and find all the archives that we've had since 1867. So we wish everyone a welcome. It looks like the weatherman is going to give us good weather, so thank you.
Great, thank you, appreciate it. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Pete, appreciate that fine presentation, and I look forward to the event on Saturday. Should be quite the day. Council, we have before us the minutes of the regular city council meeting of April 17, 2017. Is there any additions or corrections to the minutes of that meeting? Seeing none, they stand approved. Council items to be considered. Any additional council items to be considered? Consent agenda. Council, what's your wish? Councilmember Brox makes a motion to approve. Is there a second? Seconded by Councilmember Balsanic. That motion is now before the body to approve the consent agenda. Any discussion to that motion? Seeing none, all those in favor of that motion say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. The motion prevails. Next, we'll go to awarding of contracts at public hearing. We have one public hearing tonight in regards to the vacation of a right-of-way, Block 6 at Barker's Addition. John, welcome to the meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, City Council members. I'll put up a map here in a second to show the location of what we're looking at tonight. We've got two actions related to a property here. The first of all is a public hearing for a vacation of right-of-way and alleyway, which is shown in red here. The location we're looking at is in East Hastings. This is East 3rd Street. This is Locust Street down here. The Vermilion Slough passes to the north of the property. Property in question is at 1501 East 3rd Street. The first action we have before you tonight is to hold a public hearing to consider vacation of this red alleyway. It's a 20-foot right-of-way for an alley that was dedicated as part of the original town of Hastings back in 1857. As you can see, it's a little bit peculiar from the standpoint it doesn't connect to anything public, with the vacation of Locust Street here previously and the location of the Vermilion Slough here. So what we're asking for is to consider that vacation tonight. I have in your packet some information related to the procedures for our consideration of vacations, and we do support the vacation in this instance here. So we have sent out notification of this to everyone within 350 feet of the property, have not heard any comments back at this time. So you can open the public hearing at this time, or I can stand for any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, John, appreciate that. I'm going to open up the public hearing on the vacation. Is there anyone here who wishes to speak to that particular item? Anyone here want to speak to the vacation? Okay. Seeing none, I will close the public hearing. Council, this issue is now before us. Discussion. Or a motion. Councilmember Balsani makes a motion to approve, second by Councilmember Fulch. That motion is now before the body. Is there any further discussion to that motion? Seeing none, all those in favor of that motion say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. The motion prevails. Next, we'll have under Community Development, a resolution, recertification of the vacation of right-of-way at Locust Street, north of 3rd Street. John?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, City Council members. We turn our attention now to the area in the blue here, which was formerly Locust Street, which stretched from East 3rd Street to the Vermilion Slough. Back in 1998, the City Council did approve the vacation of this right-of-way, and as you can see on the map here, Dakota County has recognized it within their mapping software. However, when we were looking to locate the official certification of the resolution, we could not locate it. And we did find within the minutes action that showed the vacation of the right-of-way, and so we have proof that it was done. We just don't have the actual resolution itself. So what we're asking for tonight is to reauthorize that approval from 1998 for the vacation of Locust Street as shown in blue here. So I can stand for any questions.
Thank you, John, for that presentation. Council, this issue is now before us. Discussion. Councilmember Balsanic.
Okay, so we're vacating it. Who becomes the property owner then?
Sure. Council member, the property would be subdivided as shown here, right down the middle. This is skewed a little bit to the right, but it's a 60-foot right-of-way. 30 feet would be owned by the adjoining property owners.
I'm sorry, one more question, Your Honor.
Sure.
If that were not subdivided, is it a buildable size lot if it were not subdivided?
If it were not subdivided, it possibly could. Under our consideration for public right-of-way, the right-of-way was dedicated for public purposes itself. We would not be able to sell the property as is. The only remediation that we would have for the property would be to go through the vacation process. And the vacation process has stipulations that each of the adjoining properties get 50% of that right-of-way.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, further discussion? Not, I'll seek a motion. Did you want to make a comment? There's not a public hearing, but we're willing to listen to what you have to say.
The question is, my property.
Okay.
Why don't you come right here so we get your name, we have to get your name and make it formal. So just give your name and address and then your statement, right behind by the microphone there. Welcome to the meeting, glad to have you here.
Hello, my name is Chris Katz. I live at 1425 3rd Street East with Melissa Martineau. And we're the property owners directly to the west. And it looks to me, and I'm not sure because it hasn't been explained to me, but it looks like it goes right down my driveway. Is that correct?
Sure, you point out here, so
I mean, I would like
you're the property kind of next to the blue here, is that correct? Right over to here?
Yeah, this would actually be my driveway right here.
Okay, what would happen here?
And it goes right in through the house.
Sure, sure.
So I'd like some clarification on
Clarification.
that.
When the right-of-way was vacated in 1998,
Mm-hmm.
essentially, your property line extended over to the east where it is here.
Well,
As you can,
Oh.
right to this line right here.
correct, and that's where it is now.
That's where it is now. What we're doing tonight is certifying that. Because we could not find the resolution that officially did that action in 1998, in order to make it official, we're asking for the council to recertify it. So nothing would change for the property, other than now it would be officially vacated and this property line would be at this location as shown.
We're reaffirming that decision in
reaffirming it. That'd be
1998,
another
so nothing
report.
changes.
Okay, well, I just need to have it explained, and
No problem.
Oh, you bet, that's a good thing.
I'd hate to have to move again.
That's right. Thank you for being here, appreciate it. Okay, Councilmember Fulch.
I'll make a motion to recertify the vacation of this Locust Street.
Councilmember Fultz makes a motion to approve. Is there a second to that motion? Second by Councilmember Liefeld. That motion is now before the body. Is there further discussion to that motion? Seeing none, all those in favor of that motion say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. The motion prevails. Next, we have a special use permit site plan, the Hastings Chrysler parking lot expansion at 2980 Vermillion Street. Council, I will caution you that since this is a special use permit request, it takes 6 out of 7 votes to approve. John?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor, City Council members. As shown in the red here is the area that Hastings Chrysler proposes to lease from St. Luke's Cemetery. Property is located near the junction of Vermillion Street here, Highway 316 Red Wing Boulevard. The Chrysler store is shown here. The cemetery is back at this location. What Chrysler proposes us to do is to lease this area here, which is just over an acre, and to expand their parking area for the display of vehicles for sale into the area itself. Now, the area in red is owned by the cemetery, but from what we know is free of grave sites within the proposed area itself. So there's 2 actions that are necessary for us tonight. One is the consideration of a special use permit. The special use permit allows for auto sales within the C2 zoning district. Since the auto sales are expanding to the property to the south, we need to amend that special use permit to allow the sales to occur. The second would be a site plan approval, and that would be to extend the parking lot a little bit further to the south. Now, the Planning Commission did look at this at the April 24th meeting, held a public hearing. No one spoke for or against the item during the public hearing at that time, and the Commission did recommend approval of it on a 6-0 vote. They did have some discussion related to the history and long-term plans of the leased area, some stormwater treatment, tree preservation, and number of vehicles on the site, but ultimately did grant approval to the site itself. So from our actions, from a special use permit standpoint, we're recommending approval of that. From a site plan standpoint, we're recommending approval as well. We have put a couple of conditions within the packet itself, conditioning this on MnDOT approval and making sure that the area of disturbance is less than 1 acre. That's a key point for stormwater permits on the property. And we also did put another condition here. Since Planning Commission, we learned that there may be a private propane pipe that was once used for heating of the facility that's no longer used, which may extend into the property at roughly this location. So did ask that that be removed as part of any grading that would occur, and the property owner, or the Hastings Chrysler, did agree to have that condition added too. So this is what we have at this time. I can stand for any questions. We do also have representatives from Hastings Chrysler here tonight, if you have any questions for them as well. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, John, for that presentation. Council, let's deal with the the special use permit first. So we're going to take a look at that special use permit. What's your wish? Councilmember Vaughn.
Thank you, Your Honor. Quick question first. John, how long is a special use permit good for?
Sure. Councilmember, special use permit would be indefinite, provided it's still being actively used. So provided that they are still in compliance with the conditions, there is no time limit on it.
Do they have to renew, do they have to renew that every so often, or?
They would not, no.
That's kind of my question for the applicant, Your Honor, is why not just buy the property versus lease it like that? I know that was asked during the planning commission, but I think it's good knowledge to wonder why not.
Sure, sure. And from talking to the owner of the property and to Hastings Chrysler, it sounds like it would be the desire to do that, but there's some stipulations that prevent them from doing that related to how the property can be transferred. Have that somewhat right, Doug?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Welcome to the meeting, Doug. Glad to have you here.
Good to see you. Thank you. Thank you for having me. We started this conversation with the proposal to purchase a property, and because of the property was donated by a family in town, I think the church council decided that it would be better off to keep control of the property and look at it as almost an annuity of an income for the church, and yet still have ownership of the property. And that's kind of where we ended up with this proposal to look at leasing it instead of purchasing it.
Okay. Further discussion? Okay.
Not, I make a motion to approve.
Councilmember Ball makes a motion to approve the special use permit, second by Councilmember Balsanic. That motion is now before the body. I caution we need 6 out of 7 votes. Okay? All those in favor of that motion say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. That motion prevails. Site plan. Yes. Can you give us your name, please? Welcome to the meeting.
Mayor Hicks, council member, Ward 3.
I'm sorry, and you are, I'm sorry, we need your name for the record.
Joan Keatley, Ward 3, Precinct 1.
Thank you.
I'm a family genealogist. On May 9, 1856, Abraham Truex donated 5 acres of land to St. Luke's Church for the purpose of a cemetery. The 5 acres later became 3 6/10 acres when Highway 61 was extended, and now they will soon be 2 6/10 acres. 67 of my kinfolk's remains are interred in the cemetery, including my great-great-grandmother, Mary Kingston Tyner, buried May 1864, and my great-great-great-grandmother, Rebecca Kingston, buried 2 of 1866. There are 12 Native American burials there. St. Luke's welcomed their friends to church services and then provided grave sites. They are located in the south central area of the cemetery. According to Dan Dibble, the contact person from St. Luke's, the contract with Hastings Chrysler has been in negotiation for several years. It appears acceptable to both parties. A few yards south central of the can you put that one map up again?
Excuse me there, I'll come behind you.
Okay,
Go the other way. How about that?
yes, okay.
Sure.
A few yards south central of the proposed paved lane that will be going towards the top, towards the round circle. The remains of my great-grandparents, Etta Charlotte Owen Poor and Louis Eugene Poor, are interred. It may be necessary to move their graves should commercial expansion speak again. Recall what happened to the grave sites at West 15th and Pine. They are no more. There is a heritage law regarding Native American burial sites in the United States of America. Yet shouldn't all sites be considered sacred which hold our family remains and cremains? The history on the historic Hastings water tower sign was of their making after all. I urge both parties to put a lid on this contract. No more encroachment on sanctified cemetery land is the intent of this message. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your testimony. Appreciate it. I think that message was delivered loud and clear. Okay. Okay. Okay, council, we have this before us. The issue of the site plan is now before the council. With that notation, Councilmember Liefeld.
Thank you, Your Honor. I do have one question, John, in regards to talking about future. Right now, it's a rental. It's a moneymaker for an otherwise, I'm imagining cemeteries aren't huge money-making organizations. So would they have, the church or the cemetery have the ability to stop this lease at any time?
I'd have to ask the applicant the details of the lease. From what I understand, it's a multi-year lease with options to renew after 10 or 20 years. Is that somewhat, okay. So as far as any other terms of when the contract could be voided at that point, I'm not privy to that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
I might want to suggest too, as to the point that was made just a few minutes ago, that if there were any changes to the special use permit, if there was going to be expansion, that would have to come before council.
Absolutely.
And so, if there was ever going to be any expansion of this particular site ever proposed, that would have to come before us again, to your point.
It is set up between 10 and 20 years. You can renew it again. But right now, it's a one-year lease and rental of $5,000. And I understand that Hastings Chrysler is paying the insurance on the paved road for this area. They cannot go down any more than 6 inches. There may be graves underneath. And so they have to keep it only at 6 inches. They also will be paying real estate taxes because it is now switching from no taxes, and so Chrysler, Hastings Chrysler will have to pay the real estate taxes. If after a year, real estate value goes up, then the $5,000 rental is supposed to be adjusted accordingly.
Okay.
Thank you. We have some of that information before us about that, so thank you for reiterating that. Sure, Dan? Give us your name and address, please.
My name is Dan Dibble.
Welcome.
I live on Sherman Way in Hastings, Minnesota. Hi,
Welcome to the
Joan.
meeting, Dan.
This has been going on for about 4 years now, and we have done extensive research. There are no known graves in this area. The nearest one is probably about 35 feet away to the south. We spent extensive time researching that. Like Pioneer Park, at one point, this could have been a potter's field, which is why we eliminated any excavation to 6 inches. And that's just so they can scrape topsoil and put gravel down so that the blacktop doesn't ripple. So, there's been a lot of thought that's gone into this over the years.
Thank you. And as to that concern, again, if there was a proposal to make an expansion, that would have to come back before council.
And I can tell you that it's been through the church hierarchy that there will be no expansion, and Doug has agreed to that completely.
Great. All right. Thank you. Thank you for that clarification. Okay, council, we have this before us. Councilmember Fulch.
Thank you, Your Honor. I just have a question in regards to at the end of the agreement as to what's the restoration plans then for this blacktop if you so choose not to re-up your lease agreement, because that's kind of a large area to be blacktopped and then just to be let go. I mean, it's beautiful green space right now, and so.
It would be our responsibility to restore it back to the
Okay. Okay, so that is within the agreement. Okay, all right, thank you.
Okay, council, I'll seek a motion for the site plan. Councilmember Brox moves the site plan, seconded by Councilmember Lund. That motion is now before the body. Further discussion of that motion. Seeing none, all those in favor of that motion say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. The motion prevails.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, everyone. Next, we have the approved boulevard tree maintenance requirements, and we have our distinguished Park and Recreation Director here. Chris, welcome to the meeting. Glad to have you here, sir.
Well, thank you. I'm happy to be distinguished this evening. Oh, bear with me here. I'm not a technology guy. Mr. Mayor and Council, we're here tonight. Council action is requested to support the recommendation provided by the Park and Recreation Committee of Council as it relates to boulevard tree maintenance here in Hastings. A brief recap of the committee's recommendation is basically this. After reviewing current ordinance and policy, recommendation is that maintenance of boulevard trees is the responsibility of the property owner. That maintenance does include preventative maintenance, and that property owners shall retain records of maintenance, specifically for treatments, insecticide, fungicide, what have you. And if boulevard trees are removed, the stumps must also be removed and a tree replanted. And that process should be coordinated with the city forester. Further, the committee also noticed or recommended that a significant communication and education effort take place with regard to this. This is not a well-known ordinance or well-known policies. There are many, many boulevard trees. As a matter of fact, 4,500 boulevard trees in the city of Hastings. So staff are developing the communication and education effort. It's already begun. We started that in 2016. We've made another effort in 2017. We're continuing to update our website information with everything that's relevant and helpful for property owners here in Hastings. So we'll tackle that communication education effort through a variety of means. The committee was also interested in providing some options for property owners as it relates to treatments versus removals. We want those to be coordinated with the city forester as well. We'll consider those, but removing healthy trees is not something that we would typically run full steam ahead with. Also, city staff are going to work with vendors, treatment vendors, insecticide treatment vendors, to work on specifically emerald ash borer treatments and try to negotiate some not-to-exceed prices for our community. Those can be used on boulevard trees and/or private trees. We know this occurs in other communities, so we're interested in trying to do that for the residents of Hastings. And then committee also noted that one of the other lesser-known policies we have is a diseased and hazardous tree removal policy, where if a boulevard tree becomes diseased or hazardous, the city will share in the removal costs of that tree, the tree and the tree alone, not the stump and not the replant, at 40%, property owner 60%. So committee noted, and that policy would only apply if property owners had made a good faith effort to maintain that tree, including the preventative maintenance. With that, I want to run you through a little bit of a slideshow here. I haven't put one of these together for a while, so here we go. This is kind of why we're here, why we're talking about it now. Boulevard tree maintenance came to light with emerald ash borer. Emerald ash borer was found in Hastings in 2016, and one infestation has been found, and one other adult beetle was found, both along the Mississippi River corridor. East Hastings is where the infestation was. It coincided with staff's review of the emerald ash borer management plan, and along with that, the review of ordinance and policies. And we've also developed a treatment program for park ash trees. So we will be treating park ash trees with tree injections, injected insecticide. And there's a need to address maintenance of boulevard trees. 22% of those trees on the boulevards are ash. I wish those pictures showed up a little bit better. But that's Ashland Street. And if you can picture just a beautiful canopy of ash trees running right down the street. Emerald ash borer is an invasive insect. It attacks and kills ash trees. This was introduced into the United States in the Midwest in the early 90s, or late 90s, I'm sorry, early 2000s, likely in shipping containers or shipping materials, pallets that came from overseas. It is spread across the Midwest. It's decimating ash tree populations. One of Minnesota's most abundant trees is ash. So what's the threat? Emerald ash borer feeds exclusively on ash trees. They bore into them, lay their eggs. The young beetles or larvae live inside of those, and they feed on the tree, causing injury. And once they mature, those EAB exit the tree, and they go and find another tree to feed on. And those are the pictures, larvae, the galleries that you can see underneath the bark. And you can barely see it. There's little upside down D-shaped holes where those beetles are coming out of that tree. the infestations cause extensive damage to those trees. Within 2 or 3 years, those trees will die and they'll become hazardous. What we know about ash trees is once they do die, they become hazardous very quickly. They're fragile. They fall apart. They don't stand up for years and years after they're dead. So those are some healthy ash trees in Toledo, Ohio in 2006. Those are the same trees in 2009. Like I said, we have 1,000 ash trees in the boulevards in Hastings. What can be done? EAB is scary. There are things that we can help to do to mitigate the impacts of EAB. Insecticide treatments are effective. There are contractor-applied methods. There are also homeowner-applied methods. I would suggest to anybody that has an ash tree that's interested in treating that ash tree, do your math, do the homework, understand what it is for the treatment rates, when you need to treat. The injected treatments are good for 2 years. The soil drenching, where you dilute a liquid and pour it around the trunk of the tree, is good for 1 year. If you have large ash trees on your property, you can also exceed the label rate of application of that insecticide very quickly. It's a per acre treatment or a limit on that insecticide. So read it carefully, understand what the costs are when you go to the Terry's Hardware, Ace Hardware, Walmart, wherever you can buy it, but just understand what the costs are. And homeowners will be able to understand what the cost of the contractor prices are as well. You can see the lower left, there's some healthy trees in there that have been treated. These actually were treated with a soil drench, standing next to some trees that were not treated. And then 6 years later, the same trees after treatment began, they came back. As long as the canopy is no more than 50% damaged, 50% gone, that tree can come back. Removals can also be done. They're effective. They get rid of the food for the emerald ash borer. It has a very, very drastic impact on neighborhoods. But it is an option. Trunk injection is precise and safe. So depending on the diameter of the tree, at breast height, 4.5 feet above the ground, I'm sure you guys all have this lingo down now with the memos I've sent out. You drill a certain number of holes in the base of the tree, and you go to each of those and you inject a little bit of the insecticide into that. That insecticide is taken up with the water and the nutrients from the tree, and it is delivered throughout the entire tree. What happens then is the beetle eats on the tree, the beetle dies. There's no more beetle. It also kills anything that's inside of the tree as well. So it takes away a food source. It takes about 1 or 2 weeks for that insecticide to get all the way up in there. And those trunk injections, they're good for 2 years. They're after me. This is just one of the systems. There are 2 different systems, I'm sorry. There's the tree IV type of kit where one bottle is hooked up and you have 8 or 10 different spots around the tree. The other is an air pneumatic gun. It's like a pneumatic syringe. If your doctor has one of those, run the other way. What the city has done, we have done boulevard and park tree inventories. Like I said, there's 4,500 boulevard trees in Hastings, with 1,000 of those being ash. We also have a park inventory, and about 500 of those trees that are in the parks are ash and they're desirable. We've been updating our EAB plan, and we've begun the communication and education effort, and we will continue to work on that extensively. We know it's important, we know it's scary, but we know there's things that can be done effectively. And then we're going to maintain relevant information on our city's website. What else the city will do? Again, we'll work with service providers to try and find a not to exceed rate for, that would be trunk injection. That's typically what contractors do. And then we will be injecting 1/3 of the ash trees in the parks annually. And we're anticipating, we will reevaluate often, but we're anticipating about a 10-year treatment cycle for those park trees. So we've got about 167 trees every year that our staff will be treating. And then we'll conduct periodic inventory updates. We'll take a look at those trees and see how everything's doing. Property owners, what can you do? Identify the trees on your property. I'm still not very good at that. I'm not from here, but know what's on your property. If you have trees that you're not sure if they're doing well, get them evaluated. You know, have a certified tree care company come in and take a look. Call the city forester, who's sitting here with us tonight. Proactively treat those trees. Even if you don't think emerald ash borer is anywhere around, treat your trees. It's a lot cheaper at this point. And to do that, if a homeowner wants to contact tree care services and negotiate their own prices, absolutely do that. If you want to use the homeowner applied, absolutely do that. Save your receipt. Give yourself a little file folder, put all your stuff in there, especially if it's a boulevard tree. Evaluate all that. What's next? We're going to continue to communicate with residents. We're going to continue to help educate. Paul, our city forester, goes to all of the 4th grade classes in the city of Hastings, and now Pine Harbor as well. And he talks about the Arbor Day celebration. He takes each kid a sapling tree, and this year, and he has done it before in the past, but he'll also take little EAB identification cards, wallet-sized cards for every one of those kids. So we'll have the kids take that stuff home, give that to their parents, just as an education effort. And we'll evaluate the effectiveness of treatments in the park trees, and we'll be evaluating that throughout the city as well when we know of trees that have been treated. And it's not a one and done. We're going to revisit this. So we'll have conversations as we move forward. That's my slideshow. So the action, again, is to approve committee's recommendations. And I'll give you another graphic, which I think you guys all have sitting in front of you. But for everybody else here tonight. All right, what did I do? I guess you can see it. You guys have all these tools. I don't have all these tools on mine. These are all the ash trees on the boulevards in Hastings.
I think a couple of them are mine there.
Probably.
Yeah. Well, I might have to have you take a look at them.
Is this Ashland Street here, Paul?
Yeah, Villa Court.
Yeah.
Yep.
Happy to stand for any questions.
Thank you, Chris, for that fine presentation. Council, we'll bring it here. Councilmember Vaughn.
Thank you, Your Honor. Chris, I've got a few questions here. That's a good map of boulevard trees, but do we have an idea percentage-wise in the whole community? How many more are there in people's yards?
We don't. Somehow we like to wrap that into our education effort, communication effort. No, we don't have any idea of how many private ash trees there are, any type of trees there are. We can do a little bit visually by driving around, but we don't have the authority to access private property.
And, Your Honor, my next question then is, you had talked about the percentage, the 60-40% of if they keep the paperwork, the city will pay for a portion of that. But what if it's not done correct? Are there going to be approved vendors that can inject this? You said the homeowners can do it.
Sure.
But I can say I bought the product, but how do we know it was
Sure.
done properly?
Sure. We're not going to be the tree police. But we're going to want, ideally, we have a good faith effort. I think the understanding that these mature trees that are in the boulevards or mature trees that are on your property are beneficial. They help save you dollars, for heating and cooling your house. They provide noise buffers. They help to mitigate stormwater runoff. They do all sorts of very good beneficial things as a mature tree that the smaller trees don't, or having no tree doesn't do. Tree contractors, they have to be certified pesticide applicators to be able to inject trees. That's just a stipulation with the insecticide.
Okay, and that's helpful. And my last question then is, when do they get injected? When is the time to do this? Can it be done in the winter? Can it be done in spring, summer?
Good question. I should have thrown that in there. The season to treat is basically May through August. So starting today.
Thank you.
And it's dependent a little bit. They treated a lot later than that last year. Depends on soil moisture and if trees are still uptaking. Less effective in the fall, but really effective in the May, June timeframes.
Thank you.
Councilmember Brox.
Thank you, Your Honor, and thank you, Chris. We discussed this at length with the Parks and Rec Committee of the Council, which was Councilmember Fulch, Leifeld, and myself. I went home after the meeting after talking about this, and I have 5 ash trees in my own backyard. So I'm affected directly and will have to deal with those trees. But I just wanted to comment that one of the things that we talked about on the committee, and one of the contexts for the people that are listening, is that we've heard from the residents that citizens value mature trees, that is something they value. So yes, we could take equipment and take down all the trees that could potentially be diseased and replace them. It's very expensive to do that. It's not preserving the character and the nature of a lot of neighborhoods in Hastings that are historic in nature. And we have heard from the residents in the past that they really value the tree coverage and just the ambiance that it provides. So the reason that we're talking about injecting and treating trees has a lot to do with the context of our neighborhoods valuing the mature trees, wanting to keep them, and that's why we were going down this route. It's also a more cost-effective option than trying to take down and replace trees, which can be very expensive. So you didn't say that part, but that was very clear to us when we were discussing this in the committee, just how much the community of Hastings values that foliage, the ambiance, the tree cover, the shade that it provides. It provides a lot of benefits that we don't necessarily think of. And I have heard from some residents who are concerned about trees getting treated with chemicals, residents who want their kids to be in a healthy environment that's clean and natural and safe. And so I would just encourage everyone who's concerned to look into it, look into the insecticide issue. As far as I understand, it's not supposed to have any negative effects in terms of affecting other animals, affecting other trees, leaching into the groundwater, but there's plenty of information available. So if you're really interested and concerned about that, I've looked into it a little bit, and I would encourage any resident that's concerned and who has these trees on their property themselves to really look into it and do what they think is best for their family.
And in particular, the injection is the most precise, the most targeted for that particular tree.
Councilmember Balsanic.
Thank you, Your Honor. A couple of questions. What have we done with the ash trees where the disease has been discovered down along the river? Have we done anything with them?
The one infestation that was known in Hastings was in East Hastings off of Second Street. Those trees were private trees, and they were far gone, and they were removed by the property owner.
Okay. And then just to make a point to kind of follow up with what Councilmember Brox was just saying, we have a mature 60-foot or so tall ash tree on the boulevard in front of our home. And we did treat it last year. I asked the company, and they're a reputable company, we've used them many times for trimming our trees around our property. They're all certified and so forth. And I said, so give me an estimate, if you did have to take this tree down. Well, it was going to be around $1,500. The treatment that we did, which was the injection treatment last year, I believe it was around $300. Don't quote me on that, folks in television land, but when you factor in what it would cost to treat it versus the cost of removal, and granted, I mean, the city's going to pay 40%, but still, 60% of $1,500 is a lot of money that you would have to encumber. So I really encourage property owners to do the treatment. I think it's like a, just short term. It's not going to be that much out of your pocket, but it can certainly prevent, hopefully, something that's going to be a very big hole in your wallet down the line. Thank you.
Councilmember Liefeld?
Thank you, Your Honor. Chris, thanks for putting this together for us. And I did notice a few of your jokes, so they didn't go unnoticed. I did want to point out, based on what Councilmember Brox had said, I grew up in this Ashland neighborhood that you were pointing out with all of these ash trees, go figure. I grew up on Forest, and I was quite young, maybe 35 plus years ago, we lost a ton of trees in that section of town to Dutch elm disease. It changed the layout of an absolutely beautiful neighborhood. Every street that you would go down, Ashland wasn't taken. Apparently they had ash trees. So it changed the way everything looked. And, I just wanted to emphasize that I really am finding with the people I'm talking to. Obviously, we're concerned for the health of our children, our pets, so obviously do your homework, do your due diligence, and get what's safest for you and your family. However, to save these trees, for everything they provide, I just really want to emphasize what it looked like, 35 years ago, to watch all of those trees go down, and property values went down with it. I mean, there's no doubt about it. A mature, healthy tree is something to be said. So I just wanted to thank you for the time in putting this together for us. It's great information, Chris.
Councilmember Fulch.
Thank you, Your Honor. I have to say, I'm really concerned about the effects that this is going to have on our community. I mean, just to be clear, with the policy direction that we're approving here today is that we are going to be setting the direction that it will be the responsibility of homeowners to pay for the treatment of these trees, and if they don't pay for the treatment of the trees and keep documentation that shows that they have done so, then they will be on the hook for when the tree dies. And if you look at the bar graphs that show how the infestation hits a community, it looks like the zombie apocalypse, I mean, it starts out kind of slow and then it's like, whoo, full tilt, and it hits fast and hard. And so if 20 to 25% of our trees in our community are ash trees, we're going to see a huge die-off in a relatively short time. And so I am concerned. I'm concerned because I myself put off maintenance issues. Like, do I really need to change the filter in my car, you know, I mean, honestly, I'll do it next time, right? Because I'm gonna save 40 bucks this time around, and I can make it another 3 months until the next time I have an oil change. And I'm afraid that what's gonna happen is that when folks take into consideration the cost of the, you know, the treatment for these trees, the projections that Chris had provided to us was it's about $150 to $225 per tree. And that's on kind of a skinny tree. That was on a 15-inch diameter tree. My ash tree in my backyard, I can't even wrap my arms around it. It's so big. And so I'm afraid to find out what it's going to cost for me to treat it, to be very honest. And so it's a big ticket item. And so we are pushing onto our residents a very large, a substantial amount of money to treat these trees. It's either treat the trees every 2 years or every year, depending on how it is that you want to address it, or the tree's probably going to die sometime in the next 10 years. And then you're going to be stuck with the full cost of the removal of the tree, as Councilmember Balsonic was just saying, is maybe about $1,500, and which I full-heartedly believe. And so I am planning to have community meetings within Ward 1 to talk about this, because if you look at the tree map that shows where these boulevard trees are, they are substantially in Ward 1. I mean, I can't tell proportionately, but there's a pretty deep or dense cluster of ash trees between 2nd Street and 10th Street, along Vermilion Street, and then out on 316. And so that's very concerning. When I was out door knocking this last fall, actually one of my constituents now, he was the gentleman that had the ash trees that were there in Cowtown. It was right on along almost the railroad tracks in 2nd Street. So I have been told that the emerald ash borer tree, the beetles are very lazy bugs, and they often fly off of means of transportation. And so perhaps it flew off of a train that was going by, and that's how it got there. But, and so I was door knocking, and I came upon this gentleman, and he came out and he told me the story about his trees. I had heard about the trees, but I didn't know which property it was until he came out, and he's like, look what's happening here. And he pointed out his trees, and it wasn't one tree, it was like 4 or 5 trees, 5 trees, and they were all dead. It wasn't one. And the poor fella, he was just at a loss because of the economic impact it was to him to remove those trees. And so he was mulling over, like, how many of these trees do I remove this year, and how many do I do next year? And he didn't know that you're not supposed to remove those trees in the summertime. And so he paid someone who wasn't, I don't believe, a professional tree service, just more of a random handyman to cut down the tree. And one of another resident that lives down in Cowtown was driving by and was like, hey, I could use that wood. And so he grabbed the wood and he pulled it down further down into Cowtown, and the beetles were seen flying out en masse out of these dead trees that got pulled down further down on 2nd Street. And so I'm sure it's all along now, that area, the bugs have dispersed. And I swear I was just walking along Tyler Street over by Kennedy, and I saw a dead tree and a part of the bark was removed, and I could see you could see insect marks all along on the underneath. And so I couldn't tell, like you, I can't tell if it's an ash tree or not. But it was concerning, and so who knows how fast this is moving in our community, but I'm guessing it's going to move rather rapidly starting down in Ward 1. And so I am concerned, and I would have preferred to have seen the city proactively treat the trees ourselves rather than pushing the burden onto the homeowner. If we're going to, I realize that it's a substantial task for staff to take on, but it would be a substantial savings when staff can provide the treatment for about $50 a tree, whereas it's going to cost residents $250 or $200 and something to have these trees professionally treated. So the last point I would like to make about all of this is that I would really like to see for our street replacement plans in 2017 and 2018, that the city take a different stance in regards to the ash trees that are in the neighborhoods where we're going to be having the street reconstruction, because we're ripping up the streets, we're ripping up the sidewalks, and that makes sense to me to remove these trees because inevitably they will succumb to emerald ash borer sometime in the near future if they aren't provided the pesticide. And so I think it makes sense at the time that we're ripping up streets to proactively take out these mature trees. And Councilmember Brox, I understand exactly what you're saying about people valuing trees, but other communities, many other communities for the last decade have been proactively taking out mature ash trees with the knowledge that this is coming, this wave is coming, and we should start to be more proactive in the removal of those trees. And so I would support the policy decision that we've made so far. However, I would like to see moving forward that any street reconstruction project where we're taking out major infrastructure, that we're just taking those trees as well. Because my last point I want to make is that if we're hitting our residents with a substantial fee for the property tax assessment, I don't think that it's fair also for them to have to pay for the maintenance of these trees if you only have one tree, $200 every 2 years to maintain that tree. I just think it makes more sense to remove the tree and have the opportunity, so you're not having to re-rip out the tree later and worry about stumps and the disruption of sidewalks and all of that. Just wipe the slate clean and start fresh with new infrastructure in these neighborhoods. So, okay, I'll get off my soapbox now, so thanks.
Okay, is there any further discussion? Do we have a motion yet? Okay. Councilmember Brox? Councilmember Brox makes a motion to approve. Is there a second to that motion? Second by Councilmember Liefeld. That motion is now before the council. Is there further discussion? Councilmember Balsanic?
Just, thank you, Your Honor. Just one quick question. If I understood you right, if a property owner has done the treatment, you wanted the property owner to drop off the information at your office? No, just hang on to it. So if the tree were to die, then, okay, got it. Thank you.
Okay, is there any further discussion to the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. The motion prevails. Okay. Next, we have before the City Council a liquor license discussion with Bella Vista Restaurant. Melanie, or I'll turn that over
I'll
to
handle
our
that, Mayor.
Counselor.
Thank you. Mayor and City Council, you're asked tonight to consider whether any action should be imposed for a civil penalty against Dew Olives LLC that formerly operated as Via Ristavio and now operates as Lock and Dam Eatery. Essentially, the Hastings Police Department received a report from the state's Alcohol and Gambling Enforcement Division that this establishment was placed on the Department of Revenue's no-sale list. Effectively, once an establishment is on that list, wholesalers cannot sell to the establishment, and also the retailer cannot purchase alcohol to be served at the restaurant in any other different way. There was an investigation done by AGE, and they confirmed that there was alcohol, beer, brought on the property after the no-sale date was imposed by the Department of Revenue, and at least there was some potential sales of alcohol from the establishment there. We gave notice to the owners of Dew Olives, and I believe Jennifer Malacio is here today and can address the council. She's told me that they've waived the right to any formal hearing where we would actually have the enforcement officer here, but she would like to address the council as to explaining the situation and I assume asking for some leniency as to the penalty. We were asked some questions whether or not there's a whole lot of precedent for this type of a violation in Hastings. There really isn't. There was one incident that was the same violation back at the Levy Cafe back in, I think, 2009, but I would really distinguish that as a more significant problem that was going on there, and I don't think it acts as a good comparison for this situation. I don't really have any other precedent. There was a question as to what other cities do, and I don't know that we were able to get much information from those cities as well. So One thing I can point out is the establishment is off the no-sale list now, which is a good thing. They were responsive in any inquiries that were made of them, and they did cooperate with the investigation, so I think those are items that would weigh in somewhat of a lesser sanction to be imposed. You have a broad range of sanctions that could be imposed, up to a $2,000 monetary penalty, a 60-day license suspension, a combination of those two items, or a license revocation. I certainly don't recommend any of those more harsh sanctions, but I'll defer to the council and can stand for any questions or input on those. So I would ask the mayor if you could give the owner an opportunity to address the council and probably confirm that she waives her right to a hearing before getting into much more.
Okay, thank you very much. And Jennifer, you want to come to the podium, give us your name and address? Welcome to the meeting. Glad to have you here.
Good evening, council members, Mayor Hicks. It's not a good reason I'm here, but thanks for having me. I'm Jennifer Malesio from now Lock and Dam. Dewey Olives is my LLC.
And Jennifer, right before we get started, you agree to waive?
Yes, I
the
agree to
hearing?
waive. Yes, yes,
Thank you.
we're in the wrong. March 28th, I believe. Okay, well, back in January, we were put on the no-sell for not paying our taxes. Unfortunately, winter was extremely hard for us, and you have to choose who gets the money. First is utilities, second is employees, and unfortunately, taxes was third. We did run out a lot of booze, a lot of beer. We had a get-together for our employees at the end of January, so we brought our own beer in to supply for them, knowing because I couldn't replenish whatever we took out. That beer was downstairs for almost 2 months, and unfortunately, my husband, I have a hernia, I'm not allowed to carry a lot of weight. The morning that the agent came up, my husband brought it upstairs, put it on the bar to take it out because it was going to get old. Well, Jennifer put it away. It was not the intent. I read the packet of what was going on tonight. It was never the intent to sell. I said it was downstairs for 2 months. I'm almost positive that one of my vendors reported me, because he would come in and check the beer every week, which they didn't have to because I couldn't be sold anything. But anyway, I don't know for sure, but that's what I'm thinking. Literally, the second my husband put it on the bar, the knock by the agent came on the door. And that's when he saw it. It was a Mick Golden Light and a Modelo. I said everything else was expired or was way before the January. We knew we were going on there, so we purchased a lot of beer before. And I showed the agent all of our purchases that we had, and there was nothing after January 12th. And so I just asked, we did get off that liquor license lien or hold, and we paid the fine. When I talked to the agent, he was actually a very nice gentleman, because it's kind of like the IRS. You don't want to see them, and you don't want to see the gambling people. But, so of course you get really nervous. And he said, you know, we don't want anybody to fail. Our job is for you to sell it correctly. So you need to get off that license and start selling liquor, or so you can purchase your liquor correctly again. And so that's all he found was those two, because that's all we had purchased from the store and brought in. And so I just hope everybody gives us a chance and understands, and that's it. Any questions?
Thank you, Jennifer. I'll just,
Okay.
you know, I was around when in 2009, and you know, I think Counselor's right that it's not a very good comparison to what happened at the Lively Cafe, because that was an ongoing situation. It lasted quite a long time, and there was intent there. And so that was a different situation altogether. As I reviewed this case and as I read the packet, my recommendation to council is that initially what happened is that the state of Minnesota came in there and found this situation with the owner. They were going to move forward with a license suspension and waiting for the fine to be paid. Once the fine was paid with the state of Minnesota, the proposed suspension went away. And so, and my view is that the state of Minnesota interacted, they did what they needed to do, and the business then made it whole again. They withdrew the withdrawal of license for a period, suspension of license for a few days, and accepted the $250 fine and called it a day. In my view, I think we ought to honor that. I do realize that we issue the license, but I think that once again, the state of Minnesota went into the establishment. They discovered the issue. They resolved the issue with the owner. The owner is now current and has paid the fine to the state. I'm fine with that as far as I'm concerned. This is a little bit different of a situation when a couple months ago, where we had to sell alcohol to a minor. I think these are two different issues, which I'm sure you understand. So, in my view, I would not go any further with this, only in that the state of Minnesota interjected. They imposed a penalty. The penalty was paid, and they said that they were good with that. I don't know if I'll leave that to this council, but my recommendation would be that penalty's been paid, and we can move forward from there. And I'll open up for discussion. Councilmember Vaughn.
Thank you, Your Honor. I just want some clarification from council then. Once they go on the list back in January, any product that they had, can they sell the product that's in the building already then?
Yes, they can.
So, in this case, they can buy a bunch knowing that it could be a domino effect. That's my only thing, is you could continue to do this. Sooner or later, the state's not gonna like someone being on that list over and over and over. And my question then is, does the state have what we have with our protocol if you get caught selling to minors, where there's certain levels of that? I'm afraid we don't have anything here. I mean, what the council's telling us in our packet, there's really nothing for us. I mean, someone's gonna have to throw something out there, or like the mayor did, made an idea. I think we need to get somewhere in committee that gives us something for some future council somewhere down the line. It might be us, something to follow, to say, if this happens again, I think we need to put a high value on those liquor licenses that we choose to give out, and we got to respect that. And I think that's what my biggest concern is. I'm probably okay with this, Your Honor, but I'm also concerned, I think we as a city if we issue a liquor license, we need to make very important to the community that it's a big risk taking that, but they also get rewarded the benefit too from it. So, I mean, hearing the story that we heard today, I'm assuming it's true. I mean, Jennifer is a great person. So we're taking a word for word. We didn't get any of that in our packet. And what we're hearing in our packet is we went and purchased it out of the liquor store and it was sold. So if Jennifer here wasn't here to tell me her story, now we're really kind of caught. That's where I'm getting at with the point of we need something that we can rely on.
I think that's good advice, Councilmember. I think one of the things that's kind of unique about this situation, it doesn't happen very often. It can happen, but I mean, the last time was 2009, 8 years ago. We ran into it. And then prior to that, I don't even remember having a case before the city council like this. So not that it doesn't happen because we're here tonight, but it's so rare. But I think your point's well taken. Maybe that's something we can look into the future and see if we can provide some guidance in the future. Councilmember Brox?
I just have a question, maybe this is for our counselor. If the state of Minnesota is administering this process, and they're responsible for monitoring it, the distribution, and then also the taxes and the fine, if we're doing something on top of that, why is it that way? Because it feels like to me that it's an issue between the state and the restaurant. So I'm not quite sure. I don't understand the logic of why we have to get involved, other than we are the holder of their liquor license. Why is there it seems like it's doubling up?
Sure, council member. I think the city has the ability to also impose sanctions. I wouldn't say that the city has to, but the state has control of liquor licensing and generally regulates wholesalers and sale permits. City tends to be more regulating the end users of the alcohol sales to users. So I think it is a concurrent authority that both parties have. And I think when I talked to the investigator certainly said that some cities would not take further action after the state imposed a sanction. So, but they also said others would. So I think different cities treat it differently. I think staff thought that this is something that's important that the council should have the ability to consider. But you would not necessarily have to take any action if you deemed that appropriate.
So this is a may, not a shall.
I would say so, yes.
Okay. And the reason I ask that is I agree with Councilmember Vaughn, which is anything that I can come up with seems somewhat arbitrary and drawn out of thin air. And there's no really guideline or precedent for me to follow to say this is what's fair in Hastings. So I feel like in order to make some sort of decision about a fine or a penalty or something, I need something to go on. And I feel like I don't really have anything to go on. So I would tend to agree with the mayor's direction, just because I don't want to double up on a penalty that's already been imposed. And I don't feel like I have clear guidance as a council member on what we would do if we were going to do something. It feels a little bit open-ended.
I think that's a good point, Councilmember, and I think if we do look into future penalties, what we can say is, well, maybe that first one will do what we're doing tonight, right? Because the state imposed a penalty, now they're good, and they're in good standing. But if you get caught a second time, then we can have penalties that we could refer to, okay, now it's the second time, and the city council will take action. And if we do need to have that discussion on what that would be. Any further discussion? Councilmember Balsanic?
Yeah, thank you, Your Honor. I have to agree with Councilmember Brox, and I have to agree with you, Your Honor, in terms of what you both said. And I don't want to repeat all that, but just to say that I want to see our businesses in town succeed. I want to see our businesses, do what is right in town. And I think being that, and again, agreeing with Councilmember Brox, this was a situation between the state and the business, and they have solved the problem. So I'm not interested in getting involved in this in any way, shape, or form. And I, maybe just to add too, should we have some kind of a policy regarding something like this? I think back to the situation with the levy in 2008 and 9, and that was such a weird situation with them this is like apples to oranges. It really is. And so I don't know if we could come up with a policy other than to say, well, if it happens again, if it happened more than once, if it happened a second time, then, we have some recommended actions that we might take. But being what we have right now and what has all occurred, and, Jennifer giving testimony here, and I have to believe her in terms of being a good business owner and everything being forthright. I would just like to see things kind of go away from this point on.
Is that a motion, Your Honor?
Yeah, so I would make a motion to not go further with any kind of penalty, either monetarily or reduction of sales opportunities and so forth.
Councilmember Balsanic makes a motion that there be no further action by the city of Hastings in regards to the liquor license violation. Second by Councilmember Brox. We have the motion before the body. Is there any further discussion on that motion? Councilmember Vaughn.
I still see the importance, though, that I think it needs to go to either a committee or a commission to get something for us for the future. I just, I don't need to have it in the motion, but I think it's very important that we ask staff to keep this on the radar and get something soon, so we have this ready to go for a committee or for council.
Okay. Councilmember Liefeld.
Thank you, Your Honor. Hearing what Jennifer indicated, I'd say this was a business decision made out of necessity. I don't believe it was negligence. I feel as though it's a necessity to pay your utilities to keep your business open, to pay your employees to keep your business open. I feel as though this was a decision made on necessity. And I feel, Councilmember Vaughn, I hear what you're saying. My thought process on this is the state of Minnesota sets the rules, the president's the sanctions. As a city, what we have is our police officers, our stings, what we do as a community to make sure that our businesses are following those items. And as the mayor had indicated earlier, the most recent sting, they were not in violation. So I feel that as a city, we're doing our due diligence with, we hand out the license because it's apparently too much for the state to handle. So as a city, we do it, but then they take over from there. Is that kind of, how's that work?
Go ahead, Counselor. Maybe you might explain it.
generally, this legislature gives the cities the authority to issue a certain number of liquor licenses, and they do put broad authority on the city to regulate those and to really do most of the enforcement action. I think a lot of these things may just occur without the state ever taking any enforcement action whatsoever. I think it's, the investigation happened in this case, but, frankly, from time to time, there will be other establishments on that list, and there is never an investigation that's done. So I do think the primary enforcement and regulation of the liquor license does lie with the city.
Thank you, Dan.
Okay, we have a motion before the body. Is there any further discussion to the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor of that motion say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed, nay. The motion prevails. Okay, next is comments from the audience. Is there any comments from the audience tonight? Yes, sir. Comments about the audience, yeah, about what? Any subject? Okay. Did you want to speak to the council? Yes. Okay, please. Are you with the, is that the gentleman with the truck? Yeah. I'm glad you're here because I tried to give you a call about 3 or 4 times.
I was just going to bring that up.
Yeah, and let's see, one didn't, I left a message on there twice, and the other one was disconnected.
I fled for Mexico shortly after that, and the phone was left here because that's what I do when I go.
Okay, why don't you state your name for the record,
My name
sir?
is Edward Salto, and I live directly across the street, upstairs of the tattoo parlor. And I didn't know there was going to be a meeting tonight, but I found out when I came home with my truck full of groceries and couldn't park anywhere near where I live. I'd like to make a request that I be given a permit to possibly park in the municipal lot without fear of being towed. I have a condition with my legs, especially my left one, and it just makes it very hard for me when I have to get up in the morning and come down because there's limited hours to park out in front, and if I don't get out and move my truck, it's going to be tagged and possibly towed. I was here last January, briefly, as you were just talking about, and I had a situation where I had my motorcycle and a trailer parked in the municipal lot. My motorcycle was tagged, towed, and it was broken. There was some parts broken on it. I don't know how they towed it. And my trailer was pushed to the back of the lot. And my question to you is, why was my motorcycle tagged and towed and not my trailer? The reason I'm curious to find the answer to that is, I thought I was lucky that my trailer didn't get towed, so I hooked onto it and took it to my property up north. Sometime later, I was arrested because supposedly there was a ticket on my trailer and I didn't respond to it, and I was arrested and fingerprinted and photographed and booked into jail. And I don't think it should have happened. Furthermore, the motorcycle that was towed late in the afternoon and I had ridden that bike twice that day. And so the 72-hour thing shouldn't have had any bearing on that. There was no marks on the motorcycle. I parked it again next to my trailer because I would hook it up to my trailer so the trailer wouldn't disappear on me. On election day, I walked out and there was one of your officers knocking on the security door to my apartment. And I asked him who he was looking for, and he says, the guy with the silver pickup truck. That was me. And I said, what's the problem? And he says, you've got a trailer hooked up to it. He says, you can't be on the city street with a trailer hooked up onto your truck. I said, oh, I didn't know that. Then I questioned him and I said, what would have happened if I went to saw you knocking on my door? And he said, I would have tagged and towed your truck and the trailer. That starts to get costly when you start losing vehicles 2 at a time. So he graciously gave me 2 hours to get him out of there, which I did. He told me that if it was up to him, I could stay there, but that his lieutenant had a special agenda about my truck. Now, the truck is old, beat up, dented, rusty, but it's legal. When I got done here at this meeting last January, one of your officers waved me over to him, and he offered me this. He said, I think, sir, part of your problem is you live too close to City Hall. I don't know. I can't help but feel a tad, what's the word I'm looking for? I feel like I'm being watched real close. And I just want to be a law-abiding citizen, but I don't have any off-street parking. I've got health problems. I need to be able to park my vehicle without fear of every morning when I come down that it's going to be ticketed, maybe ticketed and towed.
Well, let me address a couple of things that you've indicated. First of all, in terms of the tickets and those stories that you gave on the tickets and receiving tickets, that is now a judicial matter. So that's out of our jurisdiction. I mean,
Well,
we
I
heard your
can't
story.
prove anything anyway.
Right, and that's a jurisdictional matter of the courts. So, that's something that's being handled, in a judicial way. So we have no effect on that. You can give us your story and what you indicated, what happened, but as far as being able to have any effect on that, that's outside our purview. In terms of, that'd be called fixing a ticket down at City Hall. Well, I don't think any of us are going to do that, right? The other thing is, in terms of we don't have permitted parking in any of the municipal lots in the city of Hastings. And so you requested a permit. We don't have any. If you have a bad leg or whatever, I would probably encourage you to apply for a handicap parking sticker. I can give you, rights to park in the handicap and pursue that. And so you can do. But still, I would caution you that the 72-hour, if you had your truck in the lot in 72 hours, it'd still apply whether or not it was under a handicap stall or not. That wouldn't waive any of the rules. So I would encourage you to seek a handicap permit so you can get into those spots, with your disability, and see if that'll help your situation. Okay?
So there's not even a possibility that I could be given a waiver and have a parking spot on the street.
The municipal lots around here and street parking belongs to everybody. It belongs to you, it belongs to all your neighbors, it belongs to, everyone in the community. And we do not have a waiver system or a special parking permit that we issue to folks. Okay, so we can't grant you something that we don't have.
Okay, getting back to the trailer thing though, the paranoia thing enters in there. Why wasn't my trailer towed?
Again, sir,
towed like my motorcycle was?
like you said, we weren't there. We don't have the evidence. I don't know.
But if you were me, what would you think?
If I were you, I would obey.
Would you feel a little paranoid?
No, what I would do is, I don't think I would feel paranoid if I was following the laws of the parking areas. If you can't leave a trailer there and you can't leave something over 72 hours, that's why we have those rules and regulations. Can you imagine that lot if everybody said, hey, I can put my trailer down at City Hall Municipal parking lot. We probably have 26 of them sitting over there. If the people didn't think, they thought that was within the law, which it's not. So that's why we have these rules and regulations. Okay? So. And,
So I wasted my time is what it amounts to.
well, maybe you need to talk to your landlord. He can provide you some off-street parking. That would be a good idea.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Thank you for your testimony. Is there anyone else want to speak to the council? Okay, council announcements. Announcements. Councilmember Balsanic.
Thank you, Your Honor. On Saturday, that would be May 6th, at the county library, from 10 a.m. to 12 p.m., we're having a Ward 1 neighborhood meeting to discuss some traffic patterns along County Road 42. And
Ward 2?
Yeah, Ward 2,
Okay,
yeah.
you said
I'm-
1.
I'm sorry,
Just make
what did
sure.
I say?
The ward that you're from.
Yeah,
you
the ward that
represent.
I'm from.
Okay.
I haven't moved.
Ward 2.
So, okay, Ward 2. Yes, Ward 2, we're meeting at the county library on Saturday the 6th, 10 to noon, to talk about traffic along County Road 42, around the hospital area going out to the city limits, and then also talking about some traffic patterns on Pleasant. And at that time, I'm going to also talk about the Emerald Ash Borer treatment program and pass out some literature to folks, so if they have any questions, they can contact the Parks Department. Thank you.
Okay. Councilmember Vaughn.
Just, I'll be representing the city at 2 meetings. One this Thursday, I'll be at the Minnesota High Speed Rail at 9:30 morning down in Red Wing. And then on Saturday, May 6th in the morning, there's a Dakota County Water Forum over in Egan on the watershed.
Okay, very good. Councilmember Liefeld.
A reminder that next Monday evening, the Inclusiveness and Diversity Workshop will be being held again at 7 p.m. We try to meet every few weeks. It will be 7 p.m. at the Community Center, the old Tilden Building, and as always, all are welcome.
Thank you. Any further announcements, council? Tonight, I have a few. First of all, is there another one? Oh, Councilmember Volz.
Thank you, Your Honor. I just wanted to thank the organizers of the Hootenanny 8 that happened this last Saturday. I don't know if everyone got a chance to come down to 2nd Street. It was a wonderful evening. The majority of the restaurants down on 2nd Street had bands playing every half an hour. The band would change, and you could see the band members running from one establishment to another, and it was just wonderful. And it all went to a great cause. It went to the Hastings High School music program. I know a few of the folks that helped organize it were Joe Pettit and Bert Casperson, amongst others. And so I just wanted to say, well done. I wish we could do something like that quarterly downtown. It was a very good time. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Any further announcements? Okay. Seeing none, we have the annual Parks and Trails cleanup is this Saturday, May 6th at 9 a.m. At Vermilion Falls Park. So people meet at Vermilion Falls Park for the annual Parks and Trails cleanup at 9 a.m. More information is available through our Parks Department at 651-480-6182. Or check our website. You can also get additional information. The Planning Commission on Monday, May 8th, has been canceled, so no Planning Commission next Monday. The Parks and Recreation Commission will meet on Tuesday, May 9th at 6 o'clock at Hastings City Hall. The HEDRA will next meet on Thursday, May 11th, Statehood Day, May 11th at 6:30 at City Hall. Our summer programming has begun. You can see a schedule on our website and sign up for the text alerts. This is the programming I deals with the pavilion. With the pavilion, and I was talking to Chris earlier. He said those schedules just came out today as far as the posters. And so if people want to know what's going on for the pavilion this summer, please check our website and look for the posters that'll be going out shortly. The next city council meeting will be on Monday, May 15th at 7 p.m. And prior to that meeting, the Parks and Recreation Committee of the council was going to meet, but that's been rescheduled. And they will be meeting on Tuesday, May 30th at 6 p.m., and the topic will be joint powers agreement with the school district. And then I see Chief Schaefer is here, who wants to remind everybody that on Tuesday, May 16th, beginning at 4:30 at Sibley Street, adjacent to City Hall, will be Police Week Open House. And we'll have a short presentation at that time, and everyone be invited in the community to meet most of the officers are there and go through the police department as an open house, and it's always a good and well-attended event. Council, no other businesses before us. A motion to adjourn is in order. Councilmember Brox makes that motion to adjourn, second by Councilmember Balsanic. That's a non-debatable motion. All those in favor of that motion say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. The motion prevails, and we are adjourned. Thank you.